Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of what I've been calling Kuma's Corner. If you're just joining us for the first time this week, welcome. What this is a time where we can sit together with some of the more contemporary issues that might be facing some of us in the world and kind of talk a little bit about what the Bible has to say about them and where God sits with some of the more difficult aspects of some of our regular day-to-day lives. And what we're going to talk about today is something that I've honestly encountered a few times before. I'm sure it's something you've encountered before. It's an argument you've heard before, probably something you've had screamed at you or some other person in your regular discourse, either in person or online. And you've heard this before, right? Someone yelling, "Why should my hard-earned tax dollars go to the poor? Why don't they just stop being lazy and go get a job?" Or someone saying, "I can't believe these lazy welfare queens mooching off the system, living large and not contributing a thing." You've heard it, right? There's this belief that is ingrained in the collective subconscious of American capitalist society, this belief that constant labor, constant effort, constant dedication to the machinations of wealthy leadership is by definition virtue, and that anyone who doesn't succeed, anyone who needs to take time off, someone who just needs to rest, or worse, people who want to go and spend time with their family, these people are villainous, evil, and above all, lazy. And we've all run into this belief in some form or another at some point in our lives. Maybe it was the boss who refused to grant medical or maternity leave, insisting that it might encourage workers to stay home when the company died. Maybe it was that time when someone above you quit and the powers that be decided to assign you their workload as well and make you do a more difficult job, but without that consummate pay increase, and then called you lazy if you failed to keep up. Maybe it's that retail worker, on their third straight 18-hour day, begging the boss for just 2 consecutive days off to rest, and then being called out for not being a team player. Maybe it's that pastor in the middle of a 50-hour work week fielding threats from the congregation for having the unmitigated gall to take a day with the phone off the hook and play at the park with the family. Look, we've all seen this time and time again, this belief that not only is productivity the measure of our moral character within society, but that the degree of productivity which is required to be fundamentally good within the context of this system is adjustable at the whim of those who have, by the grace of God and the wisdom of the almighty dollar, risen to places of prominence, power, and privilege among us. This belief that dedication to your labors, to the exclusion of all else, isn't just the only way to prosper and succeed in our just and good society, but that failure to demonstrate that full measure of sacrificial dedication is in itself an expression of moral cowardice and ethical failure, a scarlet letter indicating that these who bear it are not a team player and aren't willing to put in the necessary effort, that they are just lazy. That epithet, lazy, has always been something that just drives me crazy. The way it's wielded within our society is a combination of insult and judgment, is an insistence that a person who desires to rest from their labors, who desires a world in which joy is plentiful and work is sparing, that person is somehow an individual fundamentally flawed and impaired. I can't fathom it. Initially, I struggle with it from a purely logical standpoint, much like our society so often argues against the great and terrible specter of workplace automation, insanely insisting that fewer work hours being necessary for the same level of production somehow means that fewer of those treasured 40-hour-a-week jobs will be available, rather than more logically realizing that this means everybody should be working 10-hour work weeks for the same pay and benefits. This idea that an unwillingness to work to the point of exhaustion, an unwillingness to sacrifice to the point that one's own life is reduced to just a balance of work, food, and sleep. For many of us, that idea has become a tightly held, deeply ingrained piece of our cultural identity. Those of us who are American in particular, although admittedly this way of thinking has spread far beyond the borders of this one benighted country. Those of us who are American, we hold this as one of those self-evident truths that we imagine as being etched in stone by hands both ancient and wise, and a piece of our identity so fundamentally righteous and unquestionably good that we can't help but decry the laziness of those who don't do enough, don't contribute enough, those who don't try hard enough. All right, well, it may surprise you to hear this, but I am not going to tell you that this is some BS cultural position we've long insisted has biblical origins, but actually does not appear in the text of the Bible. I'm not going to tell you that, like condemnation of the LGBTQIA community, hardcore nationalism, condemnation of abortion, and a host of other similar issues, that this is also an issue entirely shaped and refined in the fiery kiln of self-destructive late-stage capitalist dystopia. No, this condemnation of those lazy souls who refuse to work harder, refuse to simply accept that their lot in life is to contribute thanklessly to the extent that their labors become their own identity, this is actually 100% biblical. It is right there in the book. Consider here these words from the book of Exodus, chapter 5. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go so that they may celebrate a festival to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should heed him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has revealed himself to us. Let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord our God, or he will fall upon us with pestilence or sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their work? Get to your labors." Pharaoh continued, "Now, they are more numerous than the people of the land, and yet you want them to stop working?" That same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people, as well as their supervisors, "You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you shall require of them the same quantity of bricks as they have made previously. Do not diminish it, for they are lazy. That's why they cry, 'Let us go and offer sacrifices to our God.' Let heavier work be laid on them. Then they will labor at it and pay no attention to deceptive words." So the taskmasters and the supervisors of the people went out and said to the people, "Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your work will not be lessened in the least." So people scattered throughout the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, "Complete your work, the same daily assignments as when you were first given straw." And the supervisors of the Israelites, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, "Why did you not finish the required quantity of bricks yesterday and today as you did before?" Then the Israelite supervisors came to Pharaoh and cried, "Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, 'Make bricks.' Look how your servants are beaten. You are unjust to your own people." He said, "You are lazy, lazy. That is why you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Go now and work. For no straw shall be given to you, but you shall deliver the same number of bricks." The Israelite supervisors saw that they were in trouble when they were told, "You shall not lessen your daily number of bricks." As they left Pharaoh, they came upon Moses and Aaron, who were waiting to meet them. They said to them, "The Lord look upon you and judge. You have brought us into bad odor with Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Then Moses turned again to the Lord and said, "Oh Lord, why have you mistreated these people? Why did you ever send me? Since I first came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has mistreated these people, and you have done nothing at all to deliver your people." Did you see what happened here? In the words of the Pharaoh, perhaps the greatest one-dimensional villain that the Bible has ever put forth, we hear the words of every arrogant white male middle manager we've ever encountered. In the words of Pharaoh, standing defiant before God's messengers, we hear the words of every politician, every self-proclaimed entrepreneur, every money-heavy patriarch insisting that the problem today, the real problem today, is that people just don't want to work anymore. They're lazy. It doesn't matter that the people in power aren't offering wages sufficient to live on. It doesn't matter that our leaders have let the minimum wage stagnate for a generation. It doesn't matter that there's nowhere in the United States, nowhere, that a minimum wage job working full time can even afford to make rent. It doesn't matter. People just don't want to work. They're lazy. Friends, I got to ask, does that sound right to you? Did it sound right when those words came out of Pharaoh's mouth? Because the truth, the honest truth that we're avoiding, the truth that we get from the scripture is, yeah, it kind of did. When we were told that those people are lazy, man, it sounded right to us. It made sense to us that the real reason that things aren't as they should be isn't the misdeeds of the powerful and corrupt as it always has been, but the laziness of those conceited few who dared to rest from their labors rather than working themselves directly into the grave. We bought it, friends. Hook, line, and sinker. And we bought it because this is a convincing lie, one we've been believing since time immemorial. I mean, just look at how the people reacted to Pharaoh and his managers insisting that laziness was the real problem. Did they cry out in anguish at this? Did they rise up in anger? Did they stand united in defiance, insisting that this was one step too far, one indignity too great to suffer? Did they unionize, militarize, or fight back in any way? Or did they turn the full force of their rage and suffering against Moses and Aaron instead? Did they tell those who were called to speak the prophecy of the Lord to just shut the heck up already? Or what about Moses and Aaron? Did they push back against the Pharaoh or the people? Did they find themselves indignant? Or did they find themselves confused, mired in self-doubt, and then turn to the Lord in bafflement, wondering why it had all gone so wrong? Of course, it's the latter. The narratives of the powerful are themselves a powerful thing. When those who have taken leadership spin their lies and insist upon their manipulations, it's really easy to want to go along with it. After all, Pharaoh was the hand that fed the Israelites. It was his self-proclaimed mercy, his self-declared largesse that provided for the people of Israel, asking only for them to sacrifice all of themselves, the fullness of their self-identity, the entirety of their life and their labor. He had made himself into the sole source of their cultural identity, and his generosity had become their only means of survival. He had subjugated them and then convinced them it was a kindness. I think this is the idea I want to leave with you all this week. It is so terribly easy for those in power to muddy the issues and convince the oppressed, the victimized, that suffering and struggling, that their real enemy is each other. It is depressingly easy for the voice that echoes from the halls of power to convince and seduce all who might listen into, believing that despite all it asks of you, despite all it takes from you, that this voice is your truly one and only, your only kind and caring support. It's your God. But it isn't. Pharaoh is no more your God than capitalism is. You weren't lovingly and beautifully crafted by God to spend your life begging for the scraps from your master's table, working yourself to the bone and being called lazy for it. We were made to rejoice in creation, to stand warm in the sunlight of God's love, to embrace our families and see clearly the light of God's kingdom being made manifest on earth. This is a difficult goal to reach, in no small part due to the fact that the voices of power and privilege are tantalizing and tempting. It's so easy to see the politician calling poor folks lazy while living large in the government dime, the trust fund billionaire condemning the rights of workers while robbing them blind, that self-made man stealing from his employees just to shoot himself into space. It's so easy to see the faith leader who whispers lies and half-truths, always seeming to have a new reason for you to hate somebody else this week. Silvered tongues wrapping around communities, bending them like scalpels to excise anyone who might threaten their tenuous grasp on a power within the community. There will always be people telling you that those who cry out for help are lazy, telling you that God, who called to people to prophesy against these voices, that the people who have been called to prophesy against these voices of power and privilege, that they are evil and cruel and seeking only to destroy. Don't listen to them. Because while Exodus chapter 5 sees the people called lazy and then lashing out at the prophets that inspired Pharaoh to do exactly that, Exodus 6 opens with the assurance of Israel's deliverance from Pharaoh's oppression. And then come the plagues. And from there, it's a short walk, the Red Sea. God's justice is coming, friends. And those in power may call us lazy, may condemn us for speaking up, but in the end, it is God who prevails. God who takes God's people through the sea and sees the oppressors drown in the waters of their own blinding hubris. So that's my word of encouragement for you today. Hold fast, my friends. The day of the Lord is coming.